2022 is going to be a big year for the Federal Reserve. It's when most expect tapering to begin, and it's also Chair Powell's last year at the helm. While most have assumed he'll stay in place for this key Fed transition, my next guest says his job is actually now at risk. With me now is Michael Ferroli, the chief U.S. economist for J.P. Morgan. Mike, it's great to have you. I was surprised to see you put this out. What are you hearing?
So I'm not hearing anything in particular, but we are certainly hearing things publicly from just this week from Senators Sherrod Brown and Elizabeth Warren stating their concerns about Powell remaining in the job. Again, I think everyone, almost everyone agrees that he's done an excellent job when it comes to monetary policy, when it comes to steering the economy through the pandemic. But there are certainly some Democrats on the more progressive end of the party who have some concerns about Powell being a Republican and having oversight of the Fed's regulatory and supervisory responsibilities. So I think it's very much up in the air. I personally, I think he's, as I said, I think he's done a great job. But I don't think he's a lock for getting a second term. And it's not because of monetary policy. It's because of, I think, because of regulatory policy.
Why do you, so, we often hear concerns, especially from, each side of the aisle, whether the more vocal groups. So in this case, you're talking about the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Fine. But why does that have so much weight and bearing on his likelihood to stay in the job? Why shouldn't we dismiss that as the kind of noise we always hear around these transition points?
Well, again, I think this is a pretty uncertain point, and they're not only progressives in the Senate, but I think there are some progressives within the administration who, again, may have the president's ear. I believe that, as you said, Secretary Yellen probably, hopefully, supports Powell. They certainly work together well, but she won't be the only voice in the administration. And I would also point out in this whole issue that there are a couple of governors on the Federal Reserve Board whose terms could be coming up pretty soon. So that may also influence the decision on Powell, because if Biden is assured that he has a majority of Democrats on the board, he might be a little more comfortable having Powell as the chair, provided those Democrats would push forward the regulatory agenda that would presumably the administration would support. So I do think there's a lot of moving parts here when it comes to the Fed and the Fed leadership for next year.
If I were to think through this in a purely utilitarian way, it seems like it has to be dovish, because a woke Fed, so to speak, whether it's just the chair or other board members or even a Powell who's simply aware of this dynamic and maybe wants to stay in the job, wouldn't all of that lean dovish and be, more or less bullish for the markets unless there is a real inflation concern?
I think that's right. So Powell has definitely pushed the Fed, I think, in a dovish direction. Powell and his vice chair, Clarida. The framework review has been one that has tolerated higher inflation, as you mentioned, sought a more inclusive definition of full employment. And so it's a dovish Fed. And, some of the contenders that are being, thought about or named for potential replacements for Powell would also be dovish. But either way, I think policy is going to remain pretty accommodative, pretty growth friendly. And so I think the market should, I believe, like whoever's in there, and certainly would like for Powell to have another term, but I think any replacement would probably lean toward, really fostering growth and fostering full employment.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.